Well, hello, and welcome back. Welcome back to our weekly Sunday school lesson. I am Elder Latanya Milliken of the All Nations Church in Oakland, California. My pastor is Bishop Terrence L. Milliken, and this is Lesson 10 in our weekly Sunday school lesson. The date of this lesson is November the 7th, 2021. We are highlighting the book of Numbers. We will begin at the 14th chapter and the 13th verse. We'll go all the way to the 44th. We'll end this chapter. Next week, we'll be in the 16th chapter of Numbers. The subject of our lesson today is Moses' prayer and God's answer. Now, before we get into our Sunday school lesson, I have to recognize some birthdays. I want to say happy birthday to Miss Paquita Nelson. Happy birthday, my sister. She's our eldest sister, number one. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful birthday. And to her granddaughter, Miss Layla Nelson. She turned 11 years old. Happy birthday, Miss Layla. I hope you had a wonderful birthday too. I think y'all went to Benihana's. I saw it on Facebook. And so I hope you enjoyed your birthday dinner. So happy birthday to everyone who had a birthday last week and who has a birthday coming up. Happy birthday, happy birthday. So now let's get into our lesson today. I'm going to connect the dots for you, bring you up to where we are. I have to kind of reach back and bring you up to date so that the lesson can kind of flow, if you will. And so we're with the children of Israel, and you should know who the children of Israel are by now. They are Abraham's children, and God has promised them that he would bless them, make them a great nation, and without a land, you can't be a nation. And so they've gotten everything, they're massive, they have their language, they have their law, and now they're getting their land. And so 2 weeks ago, they arrived at the promised land, and the Lord said, I got it for you. There it is. I promised Abraham over almost close to 500 years ago that you would inhabit this land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and just go in and possess it. And so they decided, okay, well, let's send out spies to spy the land so we can come up with a strategy of how we're going to take it over. And so the Lord went along with that. He said, okay, that's fine. Let's pick one leader from each of the 12 tribes to go out for 40 days, spy out the land. Moses said, bring back a good report. Well, he said, bring back a report. And, it was harvest time. So he says, bring back, some fruit so we can see what it's like. They went, and we learned that the 12 came back after 40 days. They shared their report. 10 of them had an evil report and 2 had a good report. And so as the 10 were sharing their evil report, the people began to cry. They began to complain. And here's some things that they said that are really important. That's going to be brought out in our lesson today. They said, only if we had died in Egypt or even here in the wilderness. Why is God taking us to this country only to have us die in battle? Well, God had fought all their battles. And so all of a sudden they were going to die in battle. Our wives and children will be carried off as plunder. And so the more they talked about the promised land, the more they shared their evil report, the more the people were riled up, and they were crying and complaining. And we've learned about that complaining in this quarter. God does not like complaining, and there's an accountability comes along with complaining. And so they decided that they wanted to oust Moses and Aaron. Let's get rid of them. Let's get us another leader to take us back to Egypt. And so there was mutiny. And so Caleb and Joshua stood up and they says, no, we can do this. We can do this. Come on, we can do this. God is with us. He's given us the land. He's given us the victory. Don't be rebellious and disobedient. Come on, let's do this. And they was not having it. They was not hearing it. they wanted to take them out and let's stone them. Let's get rid of them. We need a new leader. We're going back to Egypt. And God heard the whole thing. And so in hearing it, he says, how long will these people treat me with contempt? Will they never believe me? Even after all the miraculous signs. So he tells Moses, I'm going to destroy them with a plague, just completely wipe them out, and I'll just start a new nation with you. It's going to be greater and stronger and better. And so we know that the Lord can do this because he had done this before. At the time, after generations after Adam, it was so wicked, the Lord destroyed everyone except for Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives, and he started all over. So it was not something that the Lord could not do. He had already done. And so Moses, here's where we're picking up our lesson today. Moses is responding to God's displeasure. And so Moses says, well, Lord, if you do that, if you wipe them out. So Moses, he objects to it. And he appeals to God's love, mercy, and long suffering. And he reminds God how he showed his power through the 10 plagues, and how the world saw it, how the Egyptians saw it, and how the Egyptians understood that God dwelled amongst his people. He appeared to God. He appeared to his people face to face through the cloud, through the smoke. We talked about that at the mercy seat. God would meet them in a tabernacle in the cloud, and he would go before them with a pillar of fire and a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day. He stood over them. He hovered over them. He was like a protective hand. And so what Moses is saying is that, Lord, the Egyptians know that, and they would spread that. And then they would say this. So let's pick up our Bibles, and we're going to read a little bit about what Moses tells the Lord in verse 15. So that's chapter 14, verse 15. Now, if you slaughter all these people with a single blow, the nations that have heard of your fame will say, the Lord was not able to bring them into the land he swore to give them, so he killed them in the wilderness. So Moses goes on to say, please, Lord, prove that your power is as great as you claim. For you said, the Lord is slow to anger and filled with unfailing love, forgiving every kind of sin and rebellion. And so Moses asked for a pardon. And that was Moses' prayer, that the Lord would forgive them and not wipe them out. And here's what the Lord said in verse 20. I will pardon them as you have requested, but as surely as I live, and as surely as the earth is filled with the Lord's glory, not one of these people will ever enter that land. They have all seen my glorious presence and miraculous signs I have performed both in Egypt and in the wilderness. But again and again and again, they test me by refusing to listen to my voice. They will never even see the land I swore to give to their ancestors. None of those who have treated me with contempt will ever see it, but my servant Caleb. Now he says, turn around and don't go toward the land where the Amalekites and the Canaanites live. Tomorrow you must set out for the wilderness in the direction of the Red Sea. And so he pardons them, but then the promised land that he had swore to give to them, he had enough. And so that is the accountability of the complaining. But that's not where it ends. I have to take this lesson a little bit further. So let's continue on. The lesson ends on the 24th, but we have time. I want to carry on where the Lord punishes the Israelites. And so, picking up at the 26th verse, then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, how long must I put up with this wicked community and its complaints about me? Here we go with the complaining and the accountability for the complaining. We will see God's response to complaining, and we will learn a lesson today. Yes, I have heard the complaints of the Israelites are making against me. I'll pause right there. God hears what you say. Don't ever think he does not. He hears every idle word that we say. So let's be conscious of what we say. Let's think positive and speak positive and not complain. Again, it's okay to ask for help, but never to complain. Verse 28, now tell them this, as surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do to you everything I heard you say. So everything that the Lord heard them say, he was going to do to them. Let's read on. You will drop dead in the wilderness because you complained against me. Every one of you who is 20 years old or older and was included in the registration will die. You will not enter and occupy the land I swore to give you. The only exception will be Caleb and Joshua. So remember they said, oh, that only if we had died in Egypt or right here in the wilderness. And they went on to say, our wives and children will be carried off as plunder. So let's see. The Lord heard that too. Read on. You will not enter or occupy the land I swore you to give to you. Only Caleb and Joshua. Verse 31. You said your children would be carried off as plunder. Well, I will bring them safely into the land, and they will enjoy what you have despised. But as for you, you will drop dead in this wilderness, and your children will be like shepherds, wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. In this way, they will pay for your faithlessness until the last of you die in the wilderness. And because your men explored the land 40 days, you must wander in the wilderness for 40 years, a year for each day, suffering the consequences of your sins. Then you will discover what it is like to have me for an enemy. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will certainly do these things to every member of the community who has conspired against me. They will be destroyed here in this wilderness, and here they will die. You know, people complain all the time. People complain all the time. Let them complain. Just make sure you don't. You don't have to join in to their conversation. Let them complain. Do not go along with the crowd when it comes to complaining. I can recall many of times I'm standing in the line and people complain about the line. They complain about this. Then they take it out on the little checker or the little teller or cashier who did come to work, who is there. Yet they complain because most people don't see the bigger picture. Most people don't understand. All they want to do is complain. That's just one scenario. There are so many other scenarios. I'm sure you have your own scenario. Do not join in the complaining. Everyone that complained in this story missed the promised land. And everything they said, death and life is in the power of the tongue. You have what you say. You have what you declare. So you have to be careful what you say. I heard a wise person say, you can think it, just don't say it. Because we are created beings. And if God created with his words, we create with our words. We write our own story, our own destiny with our own words. So be careful. Do not go along with the crowd that's complaining. And so let me just wrap up what happened. So the Lord explained to them, Moses let them know what was happening, and then they became grief. They became grief stricken. Hold on, let me just finish reading this, because I can't do this justice the way can. The 10 men Moses had sent to explore the land. Listen what happened. The ones who incited rebellion. Remember who incited remember we had a lesson with Miriam and Aaron, and who got punished? Miriam, because she incited the rebellion against Moses, the talk against Moses. And so here we see it again. So we're learning something here. Please make sure you're not the one who is inciting the rebellion. But also don't go along with the crowd and complain. I'm going to start over again in verse 36. The 10 men Moses had sent to explore the land, the ones who incited rebellion against the Lord with their bad report, were struck dead with a plague before the Lord. And only the 2 who had a good report remained. Let me hurry along. Now, when Moses reported the words of the Lord to the Israelites, they were filled with grief. They got up the next morning. They changed their mind. They said, okay, we're going to go in. We're going to take the land. They went up the hill. They said, let's go. We realized we sinned. And now we're ready to enter the land the Lord promised us. And Moses said, well, why? Why are you disobeying the Lord? He said, don't go up there. Don't go to the land where the Amalekites and the Canaanites are. Turn around, go back in the wilderness to the Red Sea. And he told them, it won't work. You go up there, but it won't work. Do not go into the land now. You will only be crushed by your enemies because the Lord is not with you. When you face the Amalekites and the Canaanites in battle, you will be slaughtered, and the Lord will abandon you because you have abandoned him. But the people were defiant, and they pushed ahead toward the hill country, even though neither Moses nor the ark of the Lord's covenant was left the camp. And here's what happened. The Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in those hills came down and attacked them and chased them back as far as Homa. What do you think about this lesson? What do you think? What do you think about those who incite rebellion or those who go along with the complaining? They had saw all God's miracles down through the journey. And when God said, go and possess the land, they were rebellious. They brought back an evil. We can't do this. And then began to complain. Oh my God. But God answered back. Clap back. So this does not go unpunished. So let's see what the aim of the lesson is as we wrap this up. I'm curious to what your thoughts are. This is high Overview of the lesson: dig deep. You have time to dig deep and get whatever you want out of this lesson. The aim of this lesson is to illustrate that God hears and responds to the sincere prayers of the faithful servants. So Moses prayed, asked for pardon. God heard him and answered his prayer. The principle of the lesson: to reaffirm the power of prayer in changing circumstances, regardless of how dire the situation may seem. The application: to establish consistent prayer life that demonstrates complete trust in and the dependence on the Lord. Okay, so that's the writer. He wants you to focus on the answer of prayer. I want you to focus on not complaining. Let's just read the conclusion and wrap it up, and I give you ready for next week's lesson. The conclusion of the lesson: the rebellion of the people in Numbers 14 seemed like the end of the line for God's people. But what we see is the amazing grace of God on full display. This is what Moses' prayer and God's answer was all about. The pleading of Moses was the means of moving the Lord to relent of his righteous anger. In the Lord's turning from his wrath, he shows himself to be gracious among human comprehension once again. Next week's lesson, we're going to be in Numbers, the 16th chapter. The rebellion of the people in Numbers 14 culminated in pressing the Lord to nearly destroy them. As we continue our studies, we will see that unfortunately, the people's unfaithfulness persisted, as demonstrated by Korah's rebellion in our next week lesson. So that ends our lesson. Please leave me some comments and share the lesson, share it, like it. It's important, especially in this day and time, that we understand God is listening. When we're faithful, he's listening to our prayers. And when we're complaining, he's listening to what we hear. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. Until next week, God bless you.